they did so much in the building. They're there, but you can barely see them. Really nice. They were huge.
All right, so we're live now. Woo. Woo. It's great to be here and to see so many familiar faces up close and personal. Let's get started with this reading on what is kind of a historic occasion for most of us, a re-entry back into a traditional reading space. And welcome to everyone that's watching online today as well. Okay, so this is the reading as part of the Unwalled show. So you can see around here, this is work by Elana Herzog, this wall and this particular wall. And then the photographs are by Corrine May Botz, who is a wonderful documentary filmmaker and photographer and artist. So I'm very honored to be in this show with them. They've been very gracious. And my poem is on the wall as you come up the stairs, my piece. So I would also like to thank Inju and Steve, the directors and founders of the 451 Fahrenheit house here, for their hospitality and hard work, sweat and love, and for making this amazing space ready in time for this show. And tonight the reading order will be Martina, Stacy, and then myself. And I'm going to introduce each Martina first. And I'm going to go ahead and read the biography along with a couple of personal notes because for many people we don't all know each other. So in that respect, Martina Salisbury is a poet and visual artist, creative director and designer living between Brooklyn and Catskill, New York. Born and raised in Oregon, she spent much of her youth overseas before moving to New York, temporarily, she thought, in 1998. Martina is an inaugural graduate of the School of Visual Arts MFA designer as author and entrepreneur program, and is currently co-owner of 27, a multidisciplinary design build firm in Brooklyn. Her poems have recently appeared in Maintenance, a journal of contemporary data writing and art, New York, and Love magazine, Paris. In Martina's poems, there is an abundance of tenderness and textures, silk, smoke, and ash. These poems unfold as quickly as a breath, but linger long after to illuminate moments, connection, and mystery. Please welcome Martina Salisbury.
Thank you, Brenda, for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Fahrenheit 451, for hosting this. This is the first time I'm reading in person in so long. I don't even know, like over a year, obviously. But can you hear me okay?
A little closer.
Okay, I'll try to project my voice. This is like an unfamiliar object by now. Although Zoom is very, very familiar. What do I want to start with? Just saying this space I find so inspiring. The textures on the walls, the sort of unfinished quality. I love spaces like this. Sort of, they remind me of archaeological sites that I would love to live in and have lived in the past. Just sort of discovering layers of sort of past lives in the what's left behind on the walls, or sort of scars on the floors, things like this. I love this kind of space. So thank you for hosting this reading here. I'm starting with a poem that's recent, but about something that happened a long time ago. And it's called L'Eclisse, 11 agosto 1999, Firenze. Tracks carved into walls bearing traces of landscape and memory under decades of neglect. Discovery of a museum of forgotten objects leading to secrets unforeseen. Next year's departure far from sight, as the slow disappearance of colors unnoticed by the crowds below our windows, as we cast our gaze to the sky through silver strips of negative towards a future unknown as love expected to hold us together. Premonitions unread as symbols of history repeating, hereditary patterns of abandon in search of lost time. Tracks now covered by new lives, beautiful yet still holding light and colors of moments past, waves of sound and shadows cast across a table still set for two. This one is called Cellmate. And as the daughter of poets, I hated it when my parents would write poems about me or mention me in poems. And of course, I've done the same thing to my children. This is a poem for my daughter. Trying to sleep had always been difficult, but there was a voice now, urgently screaming her name, keeping her more awake. Not the old voices in darkness, too far, if even next to her bed. She had always wanted them closer and would search the houses to find them if they were too quiet. Sometimes she brought gifts, animal sacrifices, then she slept. There had been years of dreams, a lifetime, laughing, now singing as they fade into air, soon midnight. The voice keeps her from sleep. Glowing bright, it demands attention and will not stop screaming her name. How much time do I have? 2 minutes. Okay. This one is lying in wait. Skeletons run for the door when eyes close and there is nothing to hide behind. But the lies you told yourself and everyone you know creep like smoke behind fake lashes through cracks and lines of your colored lips, flecks of ash from filterless tips stuck to powdered skin. There will be times phosphorescent bodies leak through drunken breaths, forgotten nights, and in daylight, in books not burned, pages torn out, they kiss the air with shadows. After images. Dream dissolves monochrome into dark, pale morning fog. I'm alone most of the time. I fold your clothes sitting on the floor. Carefully we whisper. Down the hall is a woman, crazy, drunk. We walk past a window frame, broken, frozen, and for a moment worried, but I know she will be okay, trapped in her bed. Closing the door behind us, our bodies spill into half-deserted streets, not asking, where do we go from here? Not a left home. I have never felt fingertips calloused by keys, claws complicated with scratches and scars of nocturnal habits. Carbon paper cuts, light catching glass, reflecting past life in glances and moments imagined, in dust of bottle green shadows, endless sky of impossible, invisible language uncertain. We scatter and draw the line before smoke turns to flame. Gradient blur. Solarized echo of test strip silhouettes, of silent feline shapes stretched before the window, shades drawn across the overcast two-dimensional grid of rooftops, colors nameless as ever. A glimmer of madness, of pre-dawn hunt, premonition of the day ahead lurking under soft fur, asleep on my chest, in the same spot I first held my son the day he was born, same gray light of oceans, the view missing so many years I've forgotten. An ode to identity. Leaves of the crown I wished for on a distant first star, scattered golden across sidewalks like cat tongues, caressing footsteps of girls in identical dresses, lifted by the wind, drowned by sirens, an ocean of castaways, each curve a fragment of light, forgotten until it's dark outside and the stars have disappeared. just have a couple more. Okay. Electric feathers. Folds of russet silk coveted like time travel to a summer night, lingering in sly pockets, waiting for secrets like foxes in dark woods and promises of chance encounters across the miles, woven like spider webs into dream skirts, heavy with thunder, waiting for a flash of skin. Underworld. In that blur of shadow and light sticking to sweat-drenched limbs, writhe as blind tendrils pull like flames, discarding fingerprints like petals and memories forgotten on the way down, waiting for summer to return to a place where girls wear corsets of bark, their breathless shapes shimmering, ignoring cat calls, crossed lines, and questions that creep to blame. I've got just 2 or 3. With the bear, spirit guide. She knew to find her way through bramble thickets tangled and sweet, solitary under the weight of a moonless sky, smoke in silhouette branches, the braille of each serrated leaf dusting her fingertips with messages, following a trail through bracken ferns to a place where grief and memory reside as lovers, and petals speak softly as dreams. I think just one more. Strangers. Over time, restless nights destined for discovery, after years of oblivion and remorse on repeat, fade as dreams and hopes for a return to the cinematic glow of streetlight memories and snapshots ever distant, move into a liminal space where uncertainty is the only thing certain. What's next? Ours to decide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Stacy Szymaszek is the author of 6 books, most recently, A Year from Today. Her book, Famous Hermits, is forthcoming, I believe, this year in the fall, or is it out now?
August.
In August, so Famous Hermits is coming out in August. She was the director of the Poetry Project from 2007 to 2018. Since then, Szymaszek was a Hugo visiting writer at the University of Montana, Minnesota, 2018 to 2019, poet in resident at Brown University, visiting poet for the Fire Island Artist Residency, and the recipient of a 2019 Foundation for Contemporary Arts grant in poetry. Grace to be born and live as variously as possible. This Frank O'Hara line reminds me of the expansiveness of Stacy's practice. From an homage to Pasolini to mastery of the poetic journal, in such varied poems like Heart Island, where the poet finds empathy for the unclaimed bodies of a Pottersfield and Long Island Sound, to the autobiographical journal of Ugly Sights. Journal started in August and A Year from Today. Stacy's latest book, Famous Hermits, a profound book-length poem born of this pandemic and her sojourn to points west. I admire Stacy's courage and willingness to be uncomfortable, and ability to have made something whole and beautiful out of an ether of sights, encounters, and language. Please welcome Stacy Szymaszek.
Thank you, Brenda, so much. It was beautiful. Thank you, Fahrenheit. It is a lovely space. The light is great in here. I'm going to read, probably too short, but I'm going to try to really read slow. So these are poems from a manuscript that I finished in Tucson, Arizona, where I lived for 2 years. My partner and I moved back to New York, so that's one thing to contextualize the poems. And I did write this book called the Pasolini book during the pandemic. So they're kind of like pandemic, working through everything that we've all had to work through in these poems, which are in dialogue with the Italian filmmaker and poet Pier Paolo Pasolini. So they are poems that for the past 20 years I've been kind of like working out something with the poems of Pasolini. And so I did it again. Okay, I work all day. I work all day like a hip priest. And at night, I wander the house on the slats that don't creak, reading the tea leaves at the back of my skull. Frequency of rose bouquets hung stock first to dry. Mark every sill as if to say, someone with a heart still lives here. The sound of street racing mobs come down on my calm courage. They want us to be like scientists, the rational outcome of their experiment. But when I watch myself with camera eye, being massacred, my ancestral blood flies, a flock of crows upon the etched faces of the treacherous. It is not my job to study their political violence, of which we are always before, but to write all day, with painstaking attention to each line, and how I love the people I love, and how I hate the revving newborn fascist, how I celebrate by releasing unforgiving word bundles that rise into the civic sky. So the poems take Pasolini's titles exactly, and sometimes the titles are awkward in terms of my lived experience. So this is an example of that. This is called Friulian Paintings. It was Friuli is where he was born, a rural Italian town. Coatless in the creosote air, I was aimless on my evening walk, my breath humid in my mask, walking, till I had a sense that I no longer existed, or I still existed in other cities too. Imagination in air, held in clouds, the smell of imagination hitting asphalt, opening passages. I was on my evening walk, kicking up dust, the sounds of people celebrating in the streets of New York City, ringing my ears. A happy horn blew in the distance, the sky phosphorial. Neighbor talked on speakerphone outside, airing her legal troubles and smoking. Casita after casita. If we lived in this casita. Maneuvered around a beat-up paddle cactus on the path, lavender patches and black undid every defense of the heart. I did notice her things on the ledge, moved after her last political wish was half realized. Leaves of elders rustled all around. I read Friulian willows as widows whose wood does not drop in storms. Think of Kollwitz, who knew how to use wood and ink to depict held anguish. The mountains in every direction are stark, provide no narratives and countless perspectives. I turned west and remembered our pagan evening, that yielding of ours, a festive measure of childish heart that made the city seem like an everyday piazza. Our love was so hot and wise, it galvanized us into hags. With 3 nights of perfect knowledge of each other, followed by ages of getting to know each other, mental drives through eastern corridors of blood red, webbed sugar maples. I still try to look my best in soft pants, dress for a workday at my desk, readying me for a walk. The news still shocks me. I am still falling from grace. Smells of people's suppers penetrated my mask. Tugged forward by puffs of newly legal weed, shrouded porch-side plosive clusters, canned salmon, coffee with plum notes, rice, and cocoa. The wind was other planetary, displacing dirty earth air, clotting it with energy to upend this mortal stasis. Each side licks their fingers and holds to the sky. There is no damp light of the sea east of me, nor deep blue of the lake, but this mountain that looks as if you could unravel yourself forever and not reach it. Redefined festive, an unreal something, an eternal street fair, a civic song thrumming in basilic veins. Visitation by the ghost of hot adolescent sex, in colors renounced for brown, bent over like an expressionist, willing to take your meaning. I headed south toward the colony of stray cats and mesquite trees, and on top of broken air conditioners, the largest gathering I've seen in months. The wind carried the glaucous stench of herb, torched my passages, an everlasting orange sun, orange with California fire. Black and purple drape drawn, a sweet clot to seize the overhandled dough dream. Spotted a few people reading on their porches, feeling Pauline, missing the Corinthians, upon seeing Fortunatus and friends, happy because these men have made up for your absences. And the wind blew an aluminum chair down the main drag, night skidded in real time. What a taste of death. Moments nullified of clairvoyance. Presence is worth years of clarity. A confused time starts to clear up in memory. Imagine a mother-in-law spoiling your life, or rather a spouse's devotion to her, spousal abandon leading to religious ecstasy. She could only die after a cruciform melody, but leaving me to love who I love with street slang, bacala and brandy latch. And then, while walking and remembering all of the cities, I realized a city can be repellent. It repels me, as in, it won't have me. Beyond surface smile and wave, people warned New York will chew you up and spit you out. But New York loved me. I still exist there because some New Yorkers still love me there, living more fully here in exquisite paradox in the provinces, far from money, not driven to speak money language, to get golden bones, not drivable into an institution. Too vivid idiom. I became lost in dawn and adobe vespers. Imagine saying the same prayer for 75 years. History gave her hell. A violent urge toward expression inflated her hands, shaken by fear of her sins, every object around her seemingly inflated. Household objects formed a parade of floats, a smiling seam ripper, a winking rolling pin, a place and a people rumored festive, covered in the dust of chaff and the sun. Infamous west wind blew me further from every home, winnowed me from those who would be kin if they could permit me safe growth. And I'll end with this short poem, Song of the Bells. When the days were so outwardly repetitious, there was the public measure of Lutheran bells sounding noon behind the house. A young man repeated, "Hello, hello," at the open door, wanted to use the phone. And in that instant, I didn't know if a day had passed or another year. He was bejeweled. He told me not to be afraid of him. I told him not to be afraid of me. Thank you.
I'll read my own biography in case you don't know who I am. In the mid-90s, Brenda Coultas moved to New York City from the Midwest to work on the staff of the Poetry Project. Her poetry can be found in Balm, Brooklyn Rail, and the anthology Readings in Contemporary Poetry, published by the Dia Art Foundation, and Infiltration from Station Hill Press. Her last book, The Tatters, an Elegy to Print Culture, was published in 2014, and the writing of An Hour in Ars Poetica is forthcoming, also from Wesleyan University Press in 2022. Great to see so many friends here. So I'm going to start with Mortal Beauty. Mortal Beauty. Angel with a bright red suitcase came to the door. We walked the streets of Catskill. We walked alleys and ice cream parlors. I saw my future in a jar, so I dashed it to the floor. I saw small pieces of wood ground into the dirt. The walls throbbed from the roots up and asked, "Are you the one who made the angel?" The angel with the bright red suitcase never complained about the beauty of mortals. One day the angel opened the suitcase. The suitcase contained the seeds of all living things. Puppies and babies, fruits and nuts, and seeds as small as stalks of dust. When the angel opened the suitcase, the seeds of all living things burst out like a brood of cicadas with only days to live. And thanks to Rich O'Russa and Soho Letter Press for turning my poem for this show into a beautiful object. And so that poem was written in communication with this space. And I'll start with just a couple of recent poems that are in Salt Magazine, which is a local Catskills magazine that Billy Chernoff edits. I once lived there on the water, and the bridge is famous. Like in pictures are wedding cakes, frosty and white, but crossing it is like rolling suitcases on stairs. Crossing over is ordinary, stone and pavement, but underneath ferries and speedboats. I lived there once for a short time. I met a man who knew the same people back home, only didn't really know them except as fellow professors at faculty meetings. Coffee shop with a little air conditioning is where we met. It was not a romance. We became a pair and took a ferry to an island to hear music in a medieval church. Mosaics of Christ and his cohorts on the ceiling. I once lived there, the same as glass blowers and grave diggers. Like the live camera pointed at my bridge, a tongue clicking in code, before my breath, an undefined future tense. Hierarchy of walls. There is an office of walls that wrote themselves into being, the Department of Walls, a city office, for composting household thoughts, for local visiting and partial thoughts. I compost leftover thoughts into a bin. The thoughts keep well in a freezer, perfectly good thoughts, combined with your neighbors, for mulching, by the river beside a white walking path. I walk into an office of compost, gather a bag of thoughts. They taste like salty licorice, like salty black coins. Strength. When I was small enough to fit into a steamer trunk, adults took the doors off of old refrigerators where children were curious enough to hide. Rectangles of glamour like house trailers, although they have doors on each end. Houses. I woke up and saw that my hands had become small chairs. I sat on them and fractured the left and the right. My hands were small chairs. I painted them in rainbow colors. Imagine this. After dinner, my hands became tables. I placed several art books upon them, and then a goose-necked reading lamp. My eyes became eggs and fit comfortably inside my sockets. My sockets could have been egg cartons for all that it mattered. My tables became houses, and we, my partner and I, moved in. Notes for a tea. Take them a cake or fruit on a stick. I eat out of the jar and scrape the skin of an orange and take my time to read handwritten notes posted on the wall. Be kind, they said, sticking their signs on the lawn. Be nice or leave, said the bartender. And I spit on all the paper napkins, but I'm always kind to the cashier. In the woods, I built an altar, not like in church, more like in nature or in head shop. I carefully placed rolling papers and a glass pipe in harmony. There are teas for sleeping, and some teas will bring you wealth. Would you drink a tea for true love? Do you like or make potions? I collect bits of paper, cast runestones, read cards, and lay out my best silk. To my love and my beloveds, be kind and be akin, be righteous, be soft and be firm. Be pleased with yourself. Inside of our kindness, which we wore as garments, as in tunics, not jumpers or dresses, our cups overflow with coins, our love invented an animal. Cave. My soul lowered by a thread into a cold lake inside a flooded mine shaft, 5 stories down. It felt like a color, not a sensation of temperature. If it were a color, it was chartreuse. I called for a UFO to show itself, and it presented as a plasma screen in the sky. A sensation like inhabiting a sealed can of wet and plastered grape leaves. It felt like moonlight inside a paint can. Please keep a lid on it, lest it evaporate, lest it dissolve. Like cave paintings destroyed by human breath. That day I felt a handprint on the inside. It felt like bruised ribs. Bald eagles. Hot tissue paper in the wind, like a flag was raised from the dirt, and the flag of dirt had powerful feathers. At first, it was like ice skating into a watery hole beneath the dirty flag roosting on serpent's arms. That feeling lasted all day. My forehead felt useless and hard, like a turquoise ring locked inside a vault. Log cabins. My tongue tastes like lime built up in a cooking pot, and I use a mirror inside an abandoned log cabin to comb my hair, which is as dead and long as antlers. My tears felt like broken glass on the ground that no one bothered to clean up, and somehow I arrived in something smaller than a car, and the wooden wheels were like secretly eating in a museum or library. Drawing. I began to draw long lines like hoarfrost on a pencil tip, and my fist felt like a hand grenade, like writing on sandpaper, and like melting my fingerprints on ice. My neighbor's boots are a rough tongue on carpeting, while our doors bounce slightly. It felt like the time a man offered to tell me a Viking saga. Was he speaking in code? It felt like sleeping under a silver mylar blanket on a bed of pine needles in the open. Sex. Afterwards, my thighs and ass felt strong and wild like the dappled horse buttocks inside a Lenora Carrington painting. Riding in a new car. Riding in a new car is like climbing the devil's tower. The car tastes like luxury coffee, and exiting through the passenger side like shopping with credit cards of platinum. We ride and talk, trying to catch a glimpse of the devil's nest. It's like returning to a beehive, but of human voices, and it stings to be near language. Noise. Carillion white or like library books on loan. I felt unable to fit my noises into a handkerchief. Withheld sneezing and avoided catnip, like an arm slipped and bounced down on spinning vinyl. The silence of that hour hung in the air, a glass ornament. The art of drinking water. And I'll end with this last piece called A Forest of Berlin. A bouquet of twigs and moss and a hard orange burst of flowers. Everyone in the forest wore black clothing like a uniform of darkness. Berlin or Bear's Den or Berlin and the bear at the door. Toy trucks and other smalls hidden under a shirt. Passing window view. Reichstag replica in porcelain and full of a wintry liquor. Everyone sleeps during the day. Clothing is tight and purposeful. Each street tells a sexy love story or a grim fairy tale. In Berlin, everyone knows the little walking man, his hat shaped like a soft skillet, and everyone keeps a suitcase of tiny toiletries stashed. In Berlin, the ends of your hair fade into turquoise. Bread is made of nuts and seeds, and cakes are rhubarb or apricot. The forest is thick with witches, and all your hard wires smoke like the flames from a fat candle. I sat outside a cafe with a blanket on my lap doing heavy eating. I woke in a city of bears that smelled of dairy farts, of meat and cheese. I woke in a city where even the toys smoked. A plastic bear smoked a plastic cigarette, and a toy bird filled with red liquid dipped its beak into a water glass over and over for my amusement. That city turned my own face into something hairy and soft, and these smells followed me home from the airport. While in the city of bears, I heard of a maiden who lived in a guard tower, even though she was not a checkpoint Charlie. Every evening she stroked her hair with a boar bristle brush. The guard dogs below, German shepherds, were serious, large and wet, and their ears pointed forward. But a bear wanted the maiden's tower, prime real estate. Bears are persistent and clever, and this bear had heard that a poem, the words in the right combination, could spring open the heavy door, reinforced with Bronze Age rebar. So the bear said, and the maiden said, yes, like that. The door fell open like an unhinged jaw of a giant, and she fled with the German shepherds to find the human whose words were stolen by the bear. After roaming for years, she wondered if the bear had eaten the poet. Time is a long corridor of dogs and towers. In later chapters, she found herself locked inside a house of hair and a castle of friendly pleasures. She was held captive in a dungeon of lust, hidden on a vast estate where there were instruments molded from a Poe story, in which a device met a tool worked by hand to break the halos of medieval lamps. Thank you. Thank you to Stacy and Martina, Elana, Corrine, Steve, and Andrew. And thank you all for coming out. We're done. There's lots of water downstairs, so if you want a sip of something. What a perfect day for our reading. I know. It's perfect. Yes. Just like last week. Yes. I'm glad you made it out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the area was,
You don't have to be like this. Be natural. Be natural.
It turned green one summer. I was here. And I
so glad you made it out. I know you're large, so I was like, okay. Maybe she was going to squeeze this. Yeah, so that is a great
I'll never forget the word you gave me.
Oh, yes.
And you were cemetery and understood to be on sleep.
Yes. I never got back to the same
Never did.
It's just so easy.
Yeah, he said I was great. And then yeah, then it comes up with every talk. Yeah. This is the last time I saw her. And Karen brought us together.
That was a really wonderful job.
And Elvis, In the podium, in the taking and writing.
Oh, that's cool. We can like live stream Got the needle in front of the camera. Thank you so much. I've never enough. At different places. And we're
So it's nice to hear your work.
We all just think about ourselves, so you start thinking like, okay, I'm gonna get everything I might need, so I don't have to do this 20 times.
Exactly. That's the truth.
So,
slash Una slash Google slash anyone.
around that, so back
They left right after your meeting. No, we're saying it's yeah. Parents are out of town, so we're sleeping. Our funny stories of sportsmen.
underneath it.
Very much
It's not like that Utopia and burning it for you. But if you want to turn into that, you can actually create a real
and we don't savor it.
And right now, you can tell our Christmas is under the tree. There's places that you can just look through it, everything at this height.
Because you know, Gene and I I follow him. That would be a fun. I was here for only about 6 months before, so I definitely kind of like I was like, I knew all through the program, but it was just like summer, and then I lived here actually here. Yeah, he was really nuts, and then all of a sudden it was like a big house, like this is your apartment. So I'm just kind of figuring out this is
But that's yeah, I've never played where everybody like that's real it's not during the pandemic.
Are you into writing walks?
Yeah. But it's also city, like city, but every friend is
Not necessarily. It is a lot of so we could really say, to be honest, but just to kind of yes, so I've seen everybody down to all the well, I was
Your town probably. But it didn't say what was happening after this. I don't think it's sustainable. It's like, you know.
They couldn't, they paid for Wi-Fi, but at the time, and then Eric and I figured out how to get
It's like the tree one more time. That would cost me $150 a year ago. And so this was at my local Williams. So then I go online and I look at they're still like, you know, quite a bit cheaper than like 3 or 4 times There was a little bit of a shortage because like, a lot of stuff shut down. They were all in Texas, all in contract, and then he sold them the price got
Meanwhile, you'll go sit in chairs.
I would never be Built houses in New York. But he wrote a lot. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, but
Yeah, I know, we're just like, I didn't really wanting to take a sabbatical for so long, but yes, it's wrong, because like, I manifested this in here.
Yeah, I'll actually think.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's you too. Saw you. Still on email.
Mexico. My son has down there. It's big family.
Hanging out. Their chickens are very
Yeah, it's like that. Like there's pockets. There's areas of the where it's unsmall and grass and other places where it's hard to see. And but if you go.
Yes. I guess that was the beginning of the
So cool.
And go to Mexico, they will let you in. Yeah.
Because then I ended up like,
Biden gave some to Mexico, opened it up to Mexico, so she got the. The one in Middletown, not a bad drive. Get the big city. It was totally painless. Well done. The big one that I would have to change. Yeah, we used to have one of those in Minneapolis. Yeah, they don't just try to. So that's not a problem. But the thing is that I'm going to summer. Besides my lawn, which is like
in that area, she went over and it's like still, there's.
and I have somebody with I have people like and it's kind of like scared. What should I do? Like ask the wrong people somebody told me once, like for example, usually I've never really been like that house for more than and if I am,
You may have a lot of trees with your neighbors right there.
so rare, I might but of course, if something were happening, with like water pressure,
Evelyn's
or
place is
people
in
here,
that too.
Whatever it takes, yeah, but we'll go down. It's really out of that place, even in the winter.
So I
We'll
know
go
there's
5
no-
weeks, 6
Oh, yeah.
weeks. Have
No,
nothing
I-
in there.
I'm
The main thing is we're not gonna be my skin. That's the worst of it, but like clean up everything in advance. You know, and whatever food we have, store it out, so not really worry about it, you know. And the lawn. But it would have to do your lawn, it's probably an ordinance in the town, you know. I have let my lawn go today. In the past, we had it sucks because then I gotta get a brush hog, you know, or I rent a brush hog to do it myself. It's a lot more work.
So, yeah, that's the
I had one guy who was like, you know, he said he could cut it, he could hay it, but he didn't want to take it. He's just a guy who has an old tractor, and, you know. What's a bush? Brush hog is like a oversized, like, the one I would rent, it just looks like a big lawnmower, you know, it's got a heavier blade, bigger motor. It'll cut down brush, you know, it'll cut down small trees, and you just walk behind it. It has a drive system. Oh yeah, they got a lot of great equipment. That's why I rent out all this stuff. And what's done like every day, like this winter when it's just snowing, we were going up and getting the equipment. Like most of the houses are pretty yeah, this stuff I rented their big machine that takes trees and turns them into chips. It's an awesome machine. So you can take 6 inches of wood, just roll it into there and just choose it up. Yeah, like in Fargo, yeah. Do you know those guys over there? I was there a lot. Well, the guy that is the main guy who does the contracts and stuff for us behind the counter, he's a little awkward, but he's a smart guy. I mean, when he's there, you know, I know I know him. I'm not like him on some basis, but the other guys are not smart. There's a guy that has like a ponytail and he's often like working on it. He's running the cash register. He's a little but they run their machines. They're the best really hard up there. I mean, I have a really hard confidence from my house, right? They don't have some of the same equipment. I really don't do so I get all the wood stuff.
No, that would be fun, so I don't know if that would be good. Yeah, no, it's lovely.
So, if you like the register and just, it's not Brookline.
Hey, Atticus, I didn't get to really say hi. How are you?
So nice. I guess you've heard, I guess, you know.
Off to Mexico. Well, that's like
It's a new thing, it's new, it's a new thing for her.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough. So it'll be great. But no, we're just talking about those. We're just talking about keeping the critters out while he's away.
Of the house.
Some people swear by mothballs. Yeah, my grandma used to use it. I hate that smell. I've used those in my own building. Just to kind of like keep them from getting too right now the land things coming into our mailbox. I got spiders in my mailbox, and sometimes hornets. Big spiders.
I did have to, and it's against my principle, go for the poison with the mice.
I had to do
I
it
suddenly realized if you weren't here in the winter, the upholstery and the storing the seeds, and I just thought, and
So that stuff just dehydrates them. Typically, they will leave the building, you know. Sometimes fun in my outbuilding, like past. They didn't get up, but it's kind of like the outbuilding's kind of like they're outdoors already. Go to look for water.
yeah, that's a fact. back on the beach, and I made it go down.
Right before July.
Credit
The weekend of July
Right,
4th.
well, so what do we have? We have,
Yeah.
I have them,
We fly out with
Yeah.
these things.
In the winter,
Yeah.
but
I mean, I've been there.
I have homeless that are renovators. They're renovators, they're not, they're in the basement, they're in the forest. They're not in the house.
Not in the forest.
Yeah, yeah, they don't.
I walk around the house, I walk around the house, and it looks old. I go to
Still wool in there.
Still wool, that foam stuff.
Yeah,
That foamy stuff.
Yeah, I found steel wool.
Yeah, so far so well. Well, I think I'm gonna go.
It's
I have a house of gas, so I can go back.
But by then, you're
Here's the
upstairs.
I was just talking to Joanne.
I don't know.
So.
Similar
worlds.
For better or worse, for better or worse.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. You gotta
Surprise gifts.
Yes.
look around without, like, say all the things you gotta do, right?
Yeah.
It's and has two
Anyway,
bathrooms.
I just throw that out because I know that they're throwing it away.
The
They go back to
Ultra, which is
their law,
a double decker, two bathrooms, and when you get on,
Yes,
there's an
so you can let me
attendant,
know if
and
you
they
have a
give you
problem.
food and drinks.
We were there, we swam like last week.
And it's only like, $6.
Wow. Super deluxe.
But then if you go below the deluxe, you get the trailway. And then they have ones that are lower than that, like old trailways. They still have those, but they'll have a couple of things before that. Like they'll have old trailways that's broken down, and then they'll have
Low battery.
a new school bus that's running, and then you'll have some weird, like 5 cents, 3 cents.
Yeah, they cover the cameras, right?
Yeah, they do. But the deluxe ones are just, and the deluxe ones go, they're safe. The deluxe ones are safe. They go at night. They're long distance.
Yeah.
Like, on the trains, you can get to sleep in cars. And
Oh, right, right.
So how
Yeah,
many hours do you have to sleep?
it's farther than New York City from here. It's not like going to New York City from here. It's 200. It's about 230 miles.
Oh, that's
So
4 hours.
it's like, well, it's like they say it's 3.5 hours, but the Mexico City is like sort of crazy traffic.
Oh, right, getting into the city.
And they also
takes
stop the
forever.
buses. There's a police who stop the buses. I don't know. It's like they're just for whatever.
Yeah.
And then but sometimes the bus stop. Yeah, it's not like you can, I don't think, people from Mexico City will come to San Miguel and they'll come and party and then they'll go drive back. They do that. But that's kind of like, I know it's scary.
Yeah.
This is like 3 hours. That'd be like 6 hours, 7 hours round trip to drive or something. Yeah, but like if you're in the deluxe bus, it's okay.
Then you can
You can
party and
Kick back.
fall asleep.
They give you can eat sandwiches. They give you sandwiches and potato chips. So
Really?
Oh man, it makes this country and there really, it's all the style. But the Mexico City is super cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's super cool. It's like design center.
It's becoming a big designer.
Yeah.
This is your one?
We stay in Chinatown. Like Mexico City has a funky Chinatown, but it's becoming less funky. It's starting to be gentrified. So the hotel we used to stay in, we still stay in it, but they kind of fixed it up. But
it's not
What sort of lower, like what?
but they're building ultra right across the
Condenser
street.
neighborhood?
I never stayed there, but we would go to like restaurants.
So a friend of mine had a gallery there, and he lived above it, and that's where I stayed when I was there. That was back in the 90s. There, and all the restaurants around there were like European, it was like Italian food,
Right, right, right.
you know.
But really, there's